the day Zelda Raines was sent away from Naco, Arizona. In the spring of 1883, the sun blazed overhead like the judgment everyone claimed she deserved, and she carried nothing but a worn leather satchel and the weight of her father's shame pressing against her shoulders. "Get on the wagon," her father said without looking at her, his weathered face turned away as though the sight of his only daughter caused him physical pain. Zelda climbed onto the buckboard without a word, her calico dress catching on the splintered wood. She did not cry. She had learned years ago that tears changed nothing in a world that had already decided what a woman should be, and she had never fit that mold. Her mother stood in the doorway of their adobe house, handkerchief pressed to her mouth, but she did not step forward. She did not embrace her daughter one last time. The shame was too great for that. The wagon lurched forward, and Zelda watched Naco grow smaller behind her, the squat buildings and dusty streets disappearing into the shimmering heat. Her father was taking her to a place 30 miles north, a strict boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Carmichael, who specialized in reforming young women who had strayed from proper society. Zelda had not strayed. She had simply been born different, with a mind that questioned everything and hands that preferred holding books to needlework, a tongue that spoke freely when silence was expected, and a spirit that refused to be contained by the narrow boundaries others had drawn around her life. She was 20 years old, and her parents had finally decided she was beyond their help. 3 failed courtships had sealed her fate. The last suitor, a banker's son from Tucson, had called off their engagement after Zelda had publicly disagreed with him about women's suffrage at a church social. She had embarrassed him, and worse, she had been right in her arguments, which made the humiliation complete. Her father had received a letter the next day, formally ending the arrangement, and that had been the final straw. The journey took most of the day, the wagon creaking over rutted roads while the desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Zelda's father did not speak to her except to offer water once, which she accepted in silence. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, they arrived at a large house that stood isolated among mesquite and saguaro cacti, its whitewashed walls glowing in the fading light. Mrs. Carmichael was a tall woman with iron-gray hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her skin. She looked Zelda up and down with cold assessment while her father explained the situation in low, urgent tones, as though Zelda's differences were a disease that might spread if spoken of too loudly. "I understand," Mrs. Carmichael said finally. "We have had many such cases. Young women who fancy themselves above their station, who think education and opinions make them equal to men. We will correct these notions. You may collect her in 6 months, Mr. Raines, and I assure you she will be much improved." Her father paid the fee, climbed back onto his wagon, and left without saying goodbye. Zelda watched him go, feeling nothing but a hollow ache where love should have been. The boarding house was a prison dressed in respectability. There were 12 other young women there, each sent away for various crimes against femininity. One had refused to marry the man her parents had chosen. Another had been caught reading medical texts. A third had cut her hair short without permission. They slept in a long dormitory, rose before dawn for prayers, spent their days in endless needlework and domestic training, and were forbidden to speak unless spoken to. Mrs. Carmichael prowled the halls with a wooden ruler that she used liberally on knuckles that moved too slowly or hands that fumbled their tasks. Zelda endured it for 3 weeks. She sat through the lectures about a woman's proper place. She hemmed sheets until her fingers bled. She memorized Bible verses about obedience and submission. She kept her thoughts locked behind her teeth and her rage contained within her chest, where it built like a thunderstorm waiting to break. On the 22nd day, when Mrs. Carmichael struck another girl across the face for speaking out of turn, something inside Zelda snapped. She stood up from her chair, crossed the room, and told Mrs. Carmichael exactly what she thought of her methods, her cruelty, and her twisted version of Christianity that worshipped subjugation instead of love. The words poured out in a torrent, 3 weeks of enforced silence erupting all at once, and every girl in that room stared at her with wide eyes and barely concealed awe. Mrs. Carmichael's face turned purple with fury. "You will be locked in the root cellar for a week," she hissed. "Perhaps darkness and hunger will teach you what words cannot." But Zelda had no intention of going into the cellar. That night, after everyone was asleep, she gathered her few belongings, slipped out a window, and ran. She had no plan beyond escape, no idea where she would go or how she would survive. She only knew that she would rather die free in the desert than live one more day in that house. She walked through the darkness, guided by starlight, heading south by instinct. The night air was cold against her skin, and strange sounds echoed across the desert, the yips of coyotes and the rustle of creatures she could not name. She was terrified but also exhilarated, each step taking her farther from captivity. By dawn, her feet were blistered and bleeding, her dress torn by thorns, and she had no idea how far she had come or how far she still had to go. The sun rose with merciless intensity, and soon Zelda was stumbling more than walking, her mouth dry as sand, her vision beginning to blur. She knew she was in trouble. She had brought no water, no food, nothing useful for survival. Her escape had been impulse rather than planning, and now she was going to pay for that recklessness with her life. She collapsed beneath a palavered tree around midday, unable to go any farther. The world spun around her, sky and earth trading places, and she thought about how ironic it was that she had fought so hard for freedom only to die alone in the wilderness. At least it would be on her own terms. That had to count for something. She must have lost consciousness because the next thing she knew, there were hands on her shoulders, lifting her, and a voice speaking words she could not quite understand. Water touched her lips, and she drank desperately, choking on it. The voice spoke again, softer this time, and she forced her eyes open to see a face above her, tanned and strong-featured, with dark eyes full of concern. "Easy now," the man said. "You are safe. Drink slowly." Zelda obeyed, taking small sips from a canteen while the stranger supported her head. As her vision cleared, she saw that he was young, perhaps 25, with dark hair, and the kind of weather-worn features that spoke of a life spent outdoors. He wore the practical clothing of a working man, canvas pants and a cotton shirt, a wide-brimmed hat hanging down his back by a leather cord. "What are you doing out here alone?" he asked when she had drunk enough. His voice carried a note of genuine puzzlement, as though finding a woman half dead in the desert was the strangest thing he had encountered in some time. "Running away," Zelda said hoarsely. There seemed no point in lying. The man's eyebrows rose. "From what?" "From people who wanted to fix me." Something flickered across his face, an expression she could not quite read. "Are you broken?" "They think so. I think differently." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded as though she had confirmed something he already suspected. "My name is Vincent Frost. I have a ranch about 5 miles east of here. Can you ride?" Zelda looked around and saw a horse standing nearby, a sturdy bay mare with intelligent eyes. "I can try." Vincent helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. He was tall, she realized, at least 6 inches taller than her own 5 feet and 5 inches, and he moved with an easy confidence that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin in a way Zelda had never been. He lifted her onto the horse as though she weighed nothing, then swung up behind her, his arms coming around to take the reins. "Hold on," he said, and urged the mare into a gentle walk. Zelda had no choice but to lean back against his chest, too weak to support herself. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body through the thin fabric of her dress. Under different circumstances, the intimacy would have embarrassed her, but she was too exhausted to care about propriety. They rode in silence across the desert, and Zelda drifted in and out of awareness. At some point, buildings appeared in the distance, a small ranch house and several outbuildings arranged around a central yard. Vincent dismounted and lifted her down, then carried her inside and laid her on a bed in a small, clean room. "Rest," he said. "I will bring you food." Zelda wanted to protest, to explain that she could not stay, that she had no money to pay him, that her presence would cause trouble. But sleep dragged her down before she could form the words. When she woke, the room was dim with evening light, and a tray sat on the table beside the bed holding bread, cheese, dried meat, and a pitcher of water. Zelda ate ravenously, her body demanding fuel, and only when her stomach was full did she allow herself to examine her surroundings more carefully. The room was simply furnished but well kept, with whitewashed walls and a colorful woven blanket on the bed. Through the window, she could see the last rays of sunlight painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. There was a knock on the door, and Vincent entered carrying a basin of water and clean cloths. "I thought you might want to wash," he said, setting them on a stand in the corner. "There are clean clothes there as well. They belong to my sister. She does not need them anymore." Something in the way he said it made Zelda ask, "Where is your sister now? Dead? Fever took her 2 years ago. She was 17. His voice was matter of fact, but Zelda heard the grief underneath. "I am sorry," Vincent shrugged. "Death is part of life out here. You learn to accept it." He moved toward the door, then paused. "What is your name?" I realized I never asked. "Zelda Raines." "Well, Zelda Raines, you are welcome to stay here as long as you need. I do not know what you were running from, but you are safe on this ranch. Nobody will hurt you here." "Why are you helping me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You do not know me. I could be anyone." Vincent turned to face her fully, and his dark eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I found you dying in the desert. What else would I do? Leave you there?" He shook his head. "Besides, I know what it is like to be considered different. People do not trust a man who chooses to live alone, who does not attend church or socialize in town. They think there is something wrong with me too." "Is there?" Zelda asked, then immediately felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Forgive me. That was impertinent." But Vincent smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to striking. "Probably. But I prefer my own company to that of hypocrites who speak of Christian charity while judging everyone who does not fit their narrow view of acceptable behavior." Zelda felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. Here was someone who understood, someone who had chosen solitude over conformity and seemed at peace with that choice. "Rest tonight," Vincent said. "Tomorrow, if you are feeling stronger, I could use help with some things around the ranch. I can pay you in room and board until you decide what you want to do next." He left before Zelda could respond, closing the door softly behind him. She sat on the bed, staring at the space where he had been, feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. For the first time since leaving Naco, she felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. The next morning, Zelda woke early and found the clothes Vincent had mentioned. They were simple garments, a cotton blouse and split skirt more practical than anything she had ever owned. She dressed, braided her long, dark hair, and ventured out of the room to find Vincent already up, cooking breakfast over a wood stove in the main room. "You are awake," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "How do you feel?" "Sore but alive. Thank you for your hospitality." "You can thank me by eating. You need to regain your strength." They sat at a rough wooden table and ate eggs and fried potatoes while morning light streamed through the windows. Vincent did not press her for her story, and Zelda was grateful for that. Instead, he talked about the ranch, explaining that he raised horses and had built the place himself over the past 4 years after leaving his family's farm in Kansas. "Why did you leave?" Zelda asked. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. "My father and I did not see eye to eye on many things. He wanted me to be someone I was not. I wanted freedom to live on my own terms. So I left and came here, where nobody knows me and nobody cares what I do as long as I do not cause trouble." "That sounds familiar," Zelda said softly. Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. They were both refugees from families and societies that had tried to reshape them into acceptable forms. They had both chosen exile over compliance. After breakfast, Vincent showed Zelda around the ranch. There were 6 horses in various corrals, beautiful animals with glossy coats and alert eyes. Vincent spoke to them in a low, gentle voice, and they came to him willingly, pressing their noses into his hands. "You have a way with them," Zelda observed. "I listen to them. Most people try to break horses to force them into submission. I prefer to work with their nature rather than against it. It takes longer, but the result is a partner, not a slave." Zelda thought about Mrs. Carmichael and her methods, about all the people who had tried to break her spirit, and felt tears prick her eyes. "That is a much kinder approach." Vincent looked at her closely. "You look like you understand something about being broken." "I understand something about people trying," Zelda said. "They have not succeeded yet. Good. Do not let them." He handed her a brush and showed her how to groom one of the horses, a gentle mare named Daisy. Zelda had limited experience with horses, but she followed Vincent's instructions and found the work soothing. The repetitive motion of the brush and the warmth of the animal's body calming something restless inside her. They worked together throughout the morning, and Vincent explained what needed to be done around the ranch. There was always work, he said, feeding and watering the animals, mending fences, maintaining equipment. He did it all himself, refusing to hire help because he valued his privacy too much. "But you are letting me stay," Zelda pointed out. "That is different. You needed help. And besides," he added with a slight smile, "I do not think you will judge me for being different when you are running from the same thing." Over the next few days, Zelda fell into a rhythm at the ranch. She worked alongside Vincent during the daylight hours, learning the countless tasks that kept the place running. In the evenings, they cooked together and talked, sharing pieces of their histories. Vincent told her about growing up on his father's farm, about the suffocating expectations and constant criticism, about his sister Emma, who had understood him better than anyone and whose death had been the final push he needed to leave. Zelda told him about her failed courtships, about her hunger for education in a world that thought women should be ornamental rather than intellectual, about the boarding house and Mrs. Carmichael's cruelty. "Your parents paid someone to torture you," Vincent said, his voice tight with anger. "How is that love? They thought they were helping me. Everyone believes they are right, that their way is the only acceptable way." "That does not make it true," Zelda smiled sadly. "No, but it makes it powerful. When everyone around you insists you are wrong, it becomes hard to trust your own judgment." Vincent reached across the table and covered her hand with his. It was the first time he had touched her since that day in the desert, and Zelda felt warmth spread from the point of contact up her arm. "Your judgment is sound," he said firmly. "The world is wrong, not you." Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening of their connection that went beyond shared experience. Zelda looked at Vincent and saw not just a refuge but a man, attractive and kind and unlike anyone she had ever known. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. As the weeks passed, that awareness grew stronger. Zelda found herself noticing small things about Vincent. The way he smiled when one of the horses did something amusing, the quiet competence of his hands as he worked, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. She caught him watching her sometimes, and the intensity of his gaze made her heart race. They did not speak of the attraction building between them, but it was there in every accidental touch, every lingering glance, every moment of charged silence. Zelda had been courted before, but those experiences had been nothing like this. Those men had wanted to possess her, to mold her into wives who would reflect well on them. Vincent seemed to want nothing from her except her company, and that made all the difference. One evening, about 6 weeks after Zelda's arrival, they were sitting outside watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The air was warm, carrying the scent of desert flowers, and somewhere in the distance, a bird sang its evening song. "I wrote to my parents today," Zelda said quietly, "to tell them I am alive and well, but that I will not be returning home." Vincent turned to look at her. "How do you feel about that? Relieved, sad, free, all of those things at once?" She picked at a thread on her skirt. "I keep waiting to feel guilty, but I do not. Is that wrong?" "No, they gave up the right to your guilt when they sent you to that place." Zelda was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need to find a way to support myself. I cannot stay here forever living on your charity." "It is not charity. You work hard, you earn your keep." "That is generous of you to say, but we both know the truth. This is your ranch, your life. I am a guest, and guests eventually overstay their welcome." Vincent turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "What if I do not want you to leave?" Zelda's breath caught. "What? Stay. Not as a guest, but as a partner. Help me run this ranch. I could use the help, and you need a place to belong." He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. "And I have come to value your company more than I can easily express." Zelda's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Vincent, I do not think you understand what you are offering. If people find out that we are living here together, unmarried, your reputation will be ruined." "I do not care about my reputation. I stopped caring what people think a long time ago. You say that now, but it is different when you are actually facing social ostracism." "Is it? Because from where I sit, you are doing just fine." Zelda laughed, a slightly bitter sound. "I had no choice, but you do. You have built a life here, a good life. I do not want to be the reason you lose it." Vincent reached out and took both her hands in his, the gesture gentle but firm. "Zelda, I am going to say something, and I need you to really hear me. I do not care about society's rules. I do not care what people in town think of me. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. These past weeks have been the happiest I can remember. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see the world in ways I never considered. You are brilliant and brave and completely yourself, and that is the most attractive thing I have ever encountered." Tears were sliding down Zelda's cheeks now, but she made no move to wipe them away. "You celebrate the things that everyone else despises about me, because everyone else is a fool." "Zelda, I know we have not known each other long, but I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to meet someone like you. Someone who understands, someone who refuses to be diminished, someone who would rather die in the desert than live a lie." His voice dropped lower, rough with emotion. "I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since the moment I found you under that tree, so defiant even in defeat." Zelda could not speak. She had dreamed of hearing words like these, but she had never believed they would come from someone like Vincent, someone who saw her clearly and loved her anyway, not despite her differences but because of them. "You do not have to say anything," Vincent continued. "I know this is sudden. I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, whether you stay or go, I want you to know that you are extraordinary exactly as you are." Zelda freed one of her hands and reached up to touch his face, her fingers trembling slightly. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I think I have been for weeks, but I was afraid to acknowledge it, afraid that it could not be real, that you would eventually see me the way everyone else does. Impossible. I could never see you as anything less than magnificent." Vincent leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Zelda did not want to. She met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was tender and searching and full of promise. It was Zelda's first real kiss, the others she had exchanged having been merely perfunctory gestures during courtships that meant nothing. This was different. This was a meeting of souls as much as bodies. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said again. "Not just for now, but forever. Marry me, Zelda, be my partner in all things. People will talk. They will say terrible things about both of us. Let them talk. We will be too busy being happy to listen." Zelda thought about returning to Nako, to the narrow confines of her parents' expectations. She thought about trying to find a position as a teacher or shopkeeper, constantly having to hide parts of herself to remain acceptable. Then she thought about staying here with Vincent, building a life based on honesty and mutual respect, surrounded by the wild beauty of the desert and the man who loved her for exactly who she was. It was not really a choice at all. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Vincent's face broke into a smile so wide and joyful that Zelda felt her heart expand to contain all the happiness flooding through her. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his arms coming around her to pull her close. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other as the stars began to appear overhead, and the desert whispered its approval in the cooling evening breeze. They were married 3 weeks later in Nako, in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Zelda had sent word to her parents about the wedding, not sure whether they would come but feeling obligated to invite them. To her surprise, her mother appeared, traveling alone. Her father, she explained, was too ashamed to attend, but her mother had defied him for the first time in her marriage. "You look happy," her mother said, studying Zelda's face before the ceremony. "I am. Happier than I ever thought possible." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I am sorry for what we did. I thought we were helping you, but I see now that we were trying to kill the parts of you that make you special. Your father does not understand, may never understand, but I do. And I am proud of you for choosing your own path." They embraced, and Zelda felt a piece of her heart that had been frozen for years begin to thaw. She had not lost her mother after all, not completely. The ceremony was brief, witnessed by her mother and a clerk from the courthouse. Vincent wore a clean white shirt and looked more nervous than Zelda had ever seen him. When he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his hands shook slightly, and Zelda loved him all the more for showing his vulnerability. "I promise to love you as you are," Vincent said, though those words were not part of the standard vows. "To celebrate your strengths and support you through your struggles, to be your partner in all things for as long as we both shall live." Zelda squeezed his hands. "And I promise to do the same, to build a life with you based on honesty and respect, to never try to change you, only to grow alongside you, for as long as we both shall live." The clerk pronounced them married, and Vincent kissed her with such tenderness that Zelda felt tears slide down her cheeks. Her mother hugged them both and pressed a small bag of coins into Zelda's hand. "For your new life," she said. "I have been saving for years. Your father does not know about it. Mother, I cannot take your money. You can and you will. Consider it my wedding gift and my apology." Her mother cupped Zelda's face. "Be happy, my darling girl. That is all I want for you now." After her mother left to catch the stage back north, Zelda and Vincent rode back to the ranch together, side by side on their horses. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold, and Zelda felt like she was riding into a painting, into a new life that she had never dared dream possible. That night, in the privacy of their home, Vincent made love to her with a patience and tenderness that erased any nervousness Zelda felt. He treated her like something precious, exploring her body with reverent hands and whispered endearments, and when they finally joined together, Zelda felt complete in a way she had not known she was missing. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Vincent traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "I have something to confess," he said. Zelda tensed slightly. "What?" "I was not completely honest about why I live alone out here." "Tell me." Vincent was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Back in Kansas, there was a woman. Her name was Sarah, and she was the daughter of a prominent family in our town. We courted for almost a year, and I thought she understood me, thought she accepted me. We talked about marriage. But then my father said something to her father, something about my tendency to question authority and my lack of interest in the church. Her father forbade the marriage, said I was not a suitable match. Sarah agreed with him. Just like that, all her promises meant nothing. She told me I was too strange, too difficult, that she could not build a life with someone who refused to conform." Zelda's heart ached for him. "I am so sorry." "Do not be. It hurt at the time, but looking back, I realized she did me a favor. If she had really loved me, she would not have let her father's opinion matter more than her own feelings. She would have fought for us the way you fought to escape that boarding house." He kissed her forehead. "You are brave in ways Sarah never was. That is why I knew I could trust you with my heart." "I will never betray that trust," Zelda promised. "Your strangeness is what makes you perfect for me." Vincent laughed softly. "We are quite a pair, are we not? Two misfits who found each other in the middle of the desert." "The best pair I can imagine." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and Zelda dreamed of open spaces and endless possibilities. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Zelda threw herself into the work with enthusiasm, discovering that she had a natural aptitude for horses. Vincent taught her everything he knew, and she proved to be a quick study, soon able to handle even the most spirited animals with confidence. They worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's needs and movements in that way couples do, when they are truly in harmony. In the evenings, after the work was done, they would sit together and talk for hours. Vincent brought out books from a trunk in his room, a collection he had been building for years, and Zelda devoured them hungrily. They discussed philosophy and politics and science, subjects she had never been allowed to explore in depth. Vincent encouraged her curiosity, delighting in her insights, and never once suggesting that such interests were inappropriate for a woman. "You have a brilliant mind," he told her one night after a particularly spirited debate about Darwin's theories. "It is criminal that you were discouraged from developing it." "I am developing it now," Zelda said, smiling. "Better late than never." One day, about 3 months into their marriage, a man rode up to the ranch leading a horse that was limping badly. The man introduced himself as Thomas Garrett, a rancher from about 20 miles south, and explained that his horse had thrown a shoe and gone lame. I heard you are good with horses, Thomas said to Vincent. Thought maybe you could help. Vincent examined the horse carefully while Zelda stood by, watching. After a few minutes he straightened and shook his head. It is not just the shoe. She has an abscess in her hoof. It will need to be drained and treated, and she will need to stay off it for at least 2 weeks. Thomas's face fell. I cannot leave her here for 2 weeks. I have work that needs doing. You can take one of mine, Vincent offered. Just bring her back when you return for yours. Thomas looked surprised. You would do that? Trust me with your horse. I am a good judge of character. I think you will bring her back. Vincent paused. My wife will need to do the treatment. She has a steadier hand than I do, and horses trust her more quickly. Thomas glanced at Zelda with obvious skepticism, but he was in no position to refuse help. All right then. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, Zelda treated the injured horse with careful attention, draining the abscess, applying poultices, and keeping the hoof clean. Vincent watched her work with obvious pride, never once questioning her abilities or trying to take over. When Thomas returned, his horse was sound again, walking without any sign of discomfort. I will be damned, Thomas said, staring at the horse in amazement. You did it. She looks better than she has in months. Your wife is a talented healer, Vincent said, putting his arm around Zelda's shoulders. I am lucky to have her. Thomas looked between them, clearly reassessing his initial judgment. I suppose you are. Thank you both. If you ever need anything, you let me know. After he left, Vincent turned to Zelda and kissed her soundly. You were magnificent. I simply did what you taught me. No, you did more than that. You have instincts I could never teach. You know what the animals need before they do. He smiled. I think we should expand. Start taking in horses for training and healing. Between your gift and my experience, we could build something special. Zelda felt excitement flutter in her chest. Do you really think so? I know so. We are better together than either of us could be alone. That is the magic of partnership. Word spread quickly after Thomas told people about Zelda's work. Soon, other ranchers were bringing horses to Vincent and Zelda, asking for training or treatment. Some came with obvious skepticism about a woman working with horses, but Zelda won them over every time with her calm competence and genuine love for the animals. Vincent stood beside her always, making it clear that she was an equal partner, not an assistant, and gradually even the most dubious clients came to respect her. The ranch prospered, and with prosperity came a kind of acceptance from the surrounding community. People still found Vincent and Zelda unusual, but their success was undeniable, and practical concerns eventually outweighed social prejudices. Zelda was different, yes, but she was useful, and in the harsh reality of the frontier, usefulness counted for more than conformity. Zelda wrote regular letters to her mother, sharing the details of her new life. Her mother wrote back with news from Nako, and though she never said so directly, Zelda could read between the lines that her mother's relationship with her father had changed. Her mother had tasted independence in attending the wedding, and it seemed she was not willing to go back to complete submission. In her latest letter, her mother had written, Your father has been forced to reconsider his opinions about women's capabilities. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, has taken over her husband's business after he suffered a stroke, and she is running it better than he ever did. Even your father had to admit that women might be capable of more than we have been allowed to attempt. He still does not speak of you often, but I see him sometimes looking at the space where your photograph used to sit before he removed it, and I think he regrets his harshness. Perhaps, in time, he will come to understand what I now see clearly, that you are stronger and happier living your truth than you ever would have been living his. Zelda showed the letter to Vincent, who read it with a thoughtful expression. Do you want to see your father again? To try to reconcile. Zelda considered the question carefully. Perhaps someday. But right now, I am focused on building our future, not repairing the past. If he ever wants to be part of our lives, he knows where to find us. The invitation is open, but I will not beg for his acceptance. You should never have to beg for anyone's acceptance, Vincent said firmly. But I understand the desire for closure. When and if you want to reach out to him, I will support you. I know you will. That is one of the many reasons I love you. As the seasons turned and their first year of marriage passed, Zelda and Vincent continued to grow both as individuals and as partners. They argued sometimes, usually about small things like the best way to repair a fence or which horse to breed to which. But they had learned to argue with respect, listening to each other's perspectives and finding compromises that satisfied them both. The passion between them remained strong, their physical connection deepening as they learned each other's bodies and desires with increasing confidence. One morning in the spring of 1884, Zelda woke feeling nauseated and immediately knew what it meant. She was pregnant. The realization filled her with a complex mix of emotions: joy, fear, excitement, and worry. She spent the day wrestling with how to tell Vincent, wanting to find the perfect moment and the right words. That evening, as they sat together watching the sun set, Zelda took Vincent's hand and placed it on her belly. "There is something I need to tell you." Vincent looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I am pregnant. We are going to have a child." Vincent's expression went through several rapid changes: surprise, wonder, and finally pure joy. He let out a whoop of happiness that startled the horses in the nearby corral, then pulled Zelda into his arms and spun her around. "Careful," she laughed. "I am not fragile, but I would rather not be dizzy." Vincent set her down but kept his arms around her. "A child, our child." His voice was thick with emotion. "I cannot believe it. This is the best news I have ever received." "You are happy then?" "Happy, Zelda, I am ecstatic. Terrified too, if I am honest. I have no idea how to be a father. And I have no idea how to be a mother. We will figure it out together the way we figure out everything else." Vincent cupped her face in his hands. "You are going to be an incredible mother. You are patient and kind and fierce when you need to be. Our child will be so lucky to have you." "To have us," Zelda corrected. "I could not do this without you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Zelda refused to slow down as much as Vincent wanted her to. She continued working with the horses, only gradually reducing her activities as her belly grew. Vincent was constantly worried, hovering over her and trying to do everything himself, until Zelda finally sat him down and explained that she needed to stay active, that idleness would drive her mad. "I am pregnant, not dying," she said firmly. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time while continuing to work. I will be careful, but I will not be helpless." Vincent relented, though he still insisted on taking over the heavier tasks. Zelda let him, recognizing that his protectiveness came from love, not a desire to control her. They prepared for the baby's arrival together, converting the small spare room into a nursery and building a cradle from smooth pine wood. Zelda sewed tiny clothes while Vincent carved little horses for decoration. They talked endlessly about names and futures, dreams they had for this child who would grow up surrounded by love and acceptance, rather than judgment and constraint. "I want our children to be free to be whoever they are," Zelda said one evening, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "Whether this baby is a boy or girl, I want them to know they can pursue any interest, any dream, without being told they are wrong for wanting more." "They will know that," Vincent promised. "We will teach them by example that people should be valued for their character and abilities, not forced into predetermined roles." He leaned close and spoke to Zelda's belly. "You hear that, little one? You get to be yourself, whoever that turns out to be." Zelda's mother came to stay with them a month before the baby was due, arriving with supplies and a determination to help that Zelda found touching. Her mother had changed in the time since the wedding, standing straighter, speaking more freely. The act of defying her husband once had apparently given her courage to do it more often. "He still asks about you," her mother told Zelda one afternoon as they sat together doing handwork. "He will not admit it, but I know he misses you. Does he regret sending me away?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. "I think he regrets many things, but pride keeps him from acknowledging them. He is a stubborn man, set in his ways. That I know. But perhaps when the baby comes, I can bring him to visit. A grandchild might soften his heart where nothing else could." Zelda considered this. "If he comes, he must come with respect. I will not subject Vincent or our child to his judgment. I understand. I will make that clear to him." The baby came on a warm October afternoon, arriving after a labor that was long but mercifully free of complications. Zelda's mother and a midwife from town attended the birth while Vincent paced outside, wearing a path in the dirt with his nervous energy. When the baby finally emerged, squalling lustily, the midwife called Vincent in. "You have a son," she said, placing the cleaned and wrapped bundle in Zelda's arms. Vincent approached slowly, his eyes wide with wonder as he looked down at the tiny face peeking from the blanket. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." The baby had a thatch of dark hair, and his eyes, when he opened them, were dark like his father's. Zelda felt a love so fierce it took her breath away, looking down at this little person she and Vincent had created together. "What should we name him?" Vincent asked. They had discussed many names but had not settled on one definitively. Now, looking at their son, Zelda said, "Victor, it means conqueror, and he has already conquered our hearts completely." "Victor Frost," Vincent said, testing the name. "I like it. It is strong, substantial." He reached out a tentative finger, and the baby's tiny hand grasped it reflexively. Vincent's eyes filled with tears. "Hello, Victor. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you and help you become whoever you are meant to be." Zelda's mother stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "He is beautiful. Congratulations to you both." As word of the baby's arrival spread, neighbors began stopping by with gifts and congratulations. Even people who had been coolly distant before seemed to warm to Zelda and Vincent now that they were a family. There was something about a child, Zelda reflected, that made people reconsider their judgments. A baby was innocent, deserving of community support, and by extension, so were his parents. Vincent was a devoted father from the beginning, taking on his share of night feedings and diaper changes without complaint. He sang to Victor in a surprisingly pleasant voice, made up silly stories, and showed a tenderness that made Zelda fall even more deeply in love with him. Watching Vincent with their son, seeing the care he took and the joy on his face, Zelda felt grateful beyond measure for the life they had built together. Victor thrived, growing from a tiny infant into a robust baby with a loud laugh and curious nature. He was fearless, reaching for everything, trying to pull himself up before he was ready, falling down and immediately trying again. Zelda saw Vincent's determination in their son and her own stubbornness too. When Victor was 6 months old, Zelda's father finally came to visit. He arrived unannounced one afternoon, riding up to the ranch alone and dismounting slowly as though his body ached. He was grayer than Zelda remembered, more stooped, and his face was deeply lined. Zelda met him in the yard, Victor on her hip. "Father." "Zelda." He looked at her for a long moment, then at the baby. "This is my grandson. This is Victor." Her father stepped closer, studying the baby's face with an intensity that made Zelda instinctively hold Victor tighter. But then her father's expression softened in a way she had never seen before, and he smiled, just a little. "He has your eyes," he said. "The same determination even as a baby." "He is strong-willed," Zelda agreed. "We think he will be quite a handful as he grows." Her father was quiet for a moment, then said, "May I hold him?" Zelda hesitated, then decided to offer trust even if it was not fully earned. She handed Victor over, and her father took the baby with surprising gentleness, supporting his head carefully. "Hello, Victor," he said softly. "I am your grandfather. I am sorry it took me so long to come meet you." Vincent had been working in the barn but had seen her father arrive. He came over now, wiping his hands on his pants and extending one to Zelda's father. "Mr. Raines, I am Vincent Frost." Zelda's father looked at Vincent for a long moment, clearly assessing him. Then he shifted Victor to one arm and shook Vincent's hand. "Your ranch looks well maintained. You work hard." "I do. We both do." Vincent moved to stand beside Zelda, his hand coming to rest on the small of her back in a protective gesture. "I can see that." Her father looked around at the corrals, the neat outbuildings, the horses grazing contentedly. "Your mother told me you were doing well, but I did not quite believe it. I thought perhaps she was exaggerating to make me feel better about how things turned out." "This is all real," Zelda said quietly. "We built this together. We have a good life." Her father nodded slowly, then handed Victor back to her. "May I speak with you alone for a moment?" Zelda glanced at Vincent, who nodded. "I will be in the barn if you need me." After Vincent left, Zelda's father removed his hat and turned it in his hands, clearly uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "I was wrong to send you to that place, wrong to try to change you. Your mother has been helping me understand that." "Has she?" Zelda was surprised. Her mother had always been so submissive. She has become quite insistent in her opinions lately. A wry smile crossed her father's face. "I am beginning to see where you get your stubbornness. I thought it came from me, but perhaps it was her all along, just hidden beneath layers of propriety." Despite everything, Zelda felt a small laugh escape. "Mother has surprised us both, it seems." "Indeed." Her father looked at her directly for the first time. "I do not understand you, Zelda. I probably never will. But watching you here, seeing what you have built, seeing how you are with your son and how your husband looks at you, I realize that you have found something I never gave you, the freedom to be yourself. That is worth more than my understanding or approval." Zelda's throat tightened with emotion. It was not everything she had wanted to hear, but it was more than she had expected. "Thank you for saying that. I cannot promise I will change overnight. I am an old man with old ideas, but I can promise I will try, for Victor's sake if nothing else." "A boy should know his grandfather." "He should," Zelda agreed, "and he will if you are willing to be part of his life." "I am. I would like that very much." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, then Zelda made a decision. She stepped forward and hugged her father, something she had not done in years. He was stiff at first, but then his arms came around her and she felt him shake with silent tears. "I missed you," he whispered. "I am sorry for everything. I know, I missed you too." When they pulled apart, both had tears on their faces. Her father cleared his throat roughly. "Well then, I should get going, but I will come back if you will have me. You are always welcome here, father, as long as you treat Vincent with respect. He seems like a good man." "Better than I gave him credit for." Her father put his hat back on. "Take care of yourself, daughter, and that beautiful grandson of mine." After he left, Vincent emerged from the barn. "How did it go?" "Better than I expected." He apologized. "He wants to be part of Victor's life." Vincent pulled her close, Victor caught between them. "I am glad. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even people who sent their daughters away to be reformed, even them. People can change given the right motivation. Love is powerful that way. Zelda leaned her head against Vincent's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for celebrating everything that makes me different, for seeing my strangeness as strength." "Always," Vincent promised. "Your uniqueness is what makes you perfect. I would not change a single thing about you." As the years passed, the ranch continued to flourish. Zelda and Vincent's reputation as horse trainers and healers spread throughout southern Arizona, and they were rarely without work. They hired a hand to help with the more routine tasks, freeing them to focus on the specialized work they loved. Victor grew from a baby into a curious, active boy who followed his parents everywhere, learning the business from infancy. Zelda proved to be the kind of mother she had hoped to be. Firm but loving, encouraging her son's natural curiosity and never telling him something was off limits simply because of his gender or age. When he wanted to help in the kitchen, she taught him to cook. When he wanted to learn to ride, Vincent put him on a horse. When he asked endless questions about how things worked, they took the time to explain, treating his inquiries with seriousness rather than dismissing them as childish prattle. 2 years after Victor's birth, Zelda became pregnant again. This time, she was less nervous, having been through the process once before. The pregnancy was similar to the first, and in the summer of 1886, she gave birth to a daughter they named Violet. The baby girl had Zelda's dark hair and Vincent's serious expression. And from the beginning, she was calmer than her brother had been, content to watch the world with thoughtful eyes. "We have a son and a daughter now," Vincent said the night Violet was born, looking between Victor, who was peering curiously at his new sister, and the infant in Zelda's arms. "Our family is complete." "Is it?" Zelda asked with a tired smile. "Do you not want more children?" "I want whatever you want, but 2 seems like a good number, manageable." Zelda laughed softly. "Manageable, listen to you, worried about being overwhelmed. You handle 20 horses at once without blinking. Horses are easier than children. They have fewer opinions." "That is true. And I suspect our children will have many opinions, given their parentage." She was right. As Victor and Violet grew, both showed signs of the independent thinking that had gotten Zelda into so much trouble. Victor questioned everything, refusing to accept, "because I said so," as an adequate explanation. Violet, despite her calm demeanor, was stubborn in the extreme, refusing to do anything she did not see the purpose of. Rather than trying to suppress these traits, Zelda and Vincent nurtured them, teaching their children to think critically while also learning to function in society. "The world will try to fit you into boxes," Zelda told them often. "It will tell you who you should be based on whether you are a boy or girl, based on what your parents do for a living, based on 100 other arbitrary factors. But you get to decide who you are. Your father and I will support whatever choices you make, as long as they come from your true self, and not from fear or others' expectations." It was a radical philosophy for the time, but Zelda and Vincent had built their entire life on the foundation of authenticity, and they were determined to pass that value to their children. Zelda's father became a regular visitor, arriving every few months to spend time with his grandchildren. He and Zelda developed a cautious relationship, not as close as it might have been if he had accepted her earlier, but real nonetheless. He never quite understood why Zelda worked with horses, or why Vincent encouraged it, but he learned to keep his opinions to himself and focus instead on the obvious love and stability in their home. One afternoon, when Victor was 5 and Violet 3, Zelda's father sat watching Vincent teach Victor how to throw a lasso while Violet toddled around the yard collecting rocks. Zelda sat beside him on the porch, shelling peas for dinner. "You have done well for yourself," her father said. "Better than I could have imagined when I left you at that boarding house." Zelda's hands stilled on the peas. Her father rarely mentioned that time directly. "That place was terrible, father. What happened to the other girls who were sent there?" Her father was quiet for a moment. "I do not know about all of them, but I heard that Mrs. Carmichael was arrested 2 years ago. Apparently, someone filed a complaint about her methods, and when authorities investigated, they found evidence of abuse. The place was shut down." Zelda felt a fierce satisfaction at that news. "Good. She deserved worse, but that is something. One of the girls who was there with you was the one who reported it. I do not remember her name, but I heard she went to the authorities after she turned 18 and was free to leave. She saved other girls from what you experienced. I am glad someone had the courage to speak up." Zelda resumed shelling peas, her movements thoughtful. "I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I had not run away that night, if I had stayed the full 6 months. Do you regret leaving? Not for a single moment. Running away was the best decision I ever made. It led me to Vincent, to this life, to my children. I would do it again in a heartbeat." Her father nodded slowly. "I think, in a strange way, my sending you there was the best thing I could have done for you. Not because the place was good, but because it pushed you to take control of your own destiny. You would not have run if you had not been desperate. You would not have been in the desert for Vincent to find. All the terrible things that happened led you to where you were meant to be." It was an oddly philosophical observation from her practical father. "Perhaps you are right. Life works in mysterious ways." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Vincent and Victor laugh together as the lasso missed its target for the 100th time. Violet came running up with her apron full of rocks, demanding that her grandfather admire each one. He did so with surprising patience, examining each stone as though it were a precious gem, and listening seriously to her explanations of why each was special. That evening, after her father had left and the children were in bed, Zelda and Vincent sat together on the porch as they did most nights, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I have been thinking," Vincent said, "about expanding our operation further. There is a valley about 10 miles from here that is for sale. Good grazing land, water access. We could run more horses if we had more space." "That would mean taking on debt," Zelda pointed out. "Right now, we own everything free and clear. That feels secure." "It does. But to grow, sometimes you have to take risks." Vincent turned to look at her. "What do you think? Is it worth it?" Zelda considered the question seriously. This was one of the things she loved most about her marriage. Vincent always consulted her, treating her as an equal partner whose opinion mattered. "How much land are we talking about?" "About 200 acres. The asking price is reasonable, and I think we could pay it off within 5 years if our business continues at its current rate." "What if something happens? What if we have a bad year?" "That is the risk. But Zelda, I think we have built something solid here. We have a reputation for quality work. People come from all over to bring us their horses. I do not think that is going to change." Zelda smiled. "You are right. And besides, we did not get where we are by playing it safe. If we had been cautious people, we never would have found each other." Vincent grinned. "Is that a yes?" "That is a yes. Let us take the risk. Let us grow." They purchased the land the following month and spent the next year developing it, building new corrals and a shelter for the horses. It was hard work, but Victor helped in his own small way, and even Violet contributed by keeping track of tools and feeding the chickens they had added to the ranch. As a family, They poured their energy into the expansion, and it paid off. Within 2 years, their horse operation had doubled in size, and they were known throughout the territory as the place to go for difficult horses or specialized training. Zelda developed a particular reputation for working with traumatized animals, horses that had been abused or mistreated and had become dangerous as a result. She had a gift for reaching them, for showing them patience and kindness until they learned to trust again. People brought her horses others had given up on, and more often than not, she transformed them into reliable, gentle animals. "You see yourself in them," Vincent observed one day, watching her work with a mare that had been beaten by her previous owner and now flinched at sudden movements. Zelda did not deny it. "I know what it is like to be treated as though something is wrong with you, to be punished for things you cannot change. These horses deserve better than they receive, just like I did. And you give it to them. You heal them." Vincent came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "That is a gift, Zelda. You take broken things and make them whole." "We make them whole together," she corrected. "I could not do this without you." As their 10th wedding anniversary approached in 1893, Vincent planned a surprise. He arranged for a friend to watch the children and the ranch for 3 days, then took Zelda to Tucson, a city she had never visited. They stayed in a hotel, the first time either of them had done so, and Vincent took her to restaurants and shops, buying her a beautiful dress and taking her to see a traveling theatrical performance. "This is too much," Zelda protested, though she was clearly delighted. "We should be saving money." "We have enough money, and you deserve to be spoiled occasionally." Vincent pulled her close as they walked down the street in the fading evening light. "You have given me everything, Zelda. A home, a family, a partnership that makes every day meaningful. The least I can do is give you 3 days of luxury." That night, in their hotel room, they made love with the leisurely passion of a couple who had grown deeply familiar with each other's bodies over the years. Afterward, lying tangled together in the unfamiliar bed, Zelda traced the lines of Vincent's face with her fingers. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Marrying someone like me. Your life would have been simpler with a more conventional wife." Vincent caught her hand and kissed her palm. "I have never regretted it for a single moment. Simple is overrated. I would rather have complex and fascinating, which is what I got with you." He turned on his side to face her fully. "Zelda, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You challenge me, inspire me, make me want to be better. You gave me children who are growing up free to be themselves. You built a business with me that we are both proud of. Why would I regret any of that? Because I am difficult, stubborn. I argue with you about things. You are strong-willed and passionate, and yes, you argue with me, which keeps me honest and prevents me from becoming complacent. Those are features, not flaws." Vincent kissed her softly. "I love you exactly as you are, which includes all the things other people found objectionable. Your independence, your intelligence, your refusal to be diminished. Those are the qualities that make you perfect for me." Tears slid down Zelda's temples into her hair. "I love you too, more than I can adequately express." "Then show me," Vincent murmured, and Zelda did, losing herself in the connection they shared, the physical and emotional intimacy that had only deepened over time. They returned home to find everything running smoothly. Victor, now 9, proudly reported that he had helped feed all the horses and had even assisted with a training session. Violet, 7, showed them the pictures she had drawn, detailed sketches of horses that showed surprising artistic talent. "You did well," Vincent told their son, ruffling his hair. "I am proud of you. Can I do more training work?" Victor asked eagerly. "I want to learn everything you and Mother know. In time, you are still young, but yes, we will teach you everything." life continued its steady rhythm. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and Zelda and Vincent's love remained the solid foundation on which everything else was built. They faced challenges, of course, droughts that tested their water resources, injuries to animals and people, the normal ups and downs of life and business. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their partnership. When Victor was 12 and Violet 10, a young woman arrived at the ranch leading a horse. She introduced herself as Margaret, and she asked if Zelda remembered her. Zelda studied the woman's face, trying to place her. There was something familiar about her eyes, but she could not quite identify it. "We were at Mrs. Carmichael's boarding house together," Margaret said quietly. "You defended that girl who was struck. Then you escaped that same night. I always wondered what happened to you." The memory came flooding back. Zelda remembered now. Margaret had been one of the other girls in that dormitory, quiet and frightened, sent away for some perceived failing. "I remember," Zelda said. "Are you all right? How did you find me?" "I am well now, though it took time. I stayed the full 6 months because I was too afraid to run. After they released me, I went home, but I could never forget what you said to Mrs. Carmichael, how you stood up for all of us. A few years ago, I was the one who reported her to the authorities. I thought you would want to know she can never hurt anyone else. You did that." Zelda felt a rush of admiration. "That took tremendous courage. I learned from you. You showed me that it was possible to stand up, to fight back." Margaret looked around at the ranch, the horses, the house. "You built a good life for yourself. I was fortunate. I met someone who celebrated the things about me that everyone else hated." Zelda gestured toward Vincent, who was working with a horse in the nearby corral. "That is my husband, Vincent, and those are our children, Victor and Violet." Margaret's eyes widened. "You have a family, a business, you are happy." "I am very happy. What about you? What brings you here?" Margaret explained that she had heard about Zelda and Vincent's reputation with difficult horses and had brought her own horse, a gelding that had developed behavioral problems. Zelda examined the animal and saw immediately that he was in pain from an old injury that had healed improperly. "I can help him," Zelda said. "It will take time, but I believe we can get him sound again." She worked with Margaret's horse over the next several weeks, and during that time, she and Margaret became friends. Margaret shared her story. After leaving the boarding house, she had eventually found work as a teacher and had married a kind man who supported her independence. She had 2 children of her own now and was living a life she had never imagined possible during those dark days at Mrs. Carmichael's place. "Seeing you here, seeing what you built, it gives me hope," Margaret said on her last day at the ranch. "It proves that we do not have to accept the limitations others try to place on us. We can define ourselves." "That is exactly right," Zelda agreed. "And thank you for being brave enough to stop Mrs. Carmichael. You saved other girls from what we experienced." After Margaret left, Zelda found herself reflecting on how far she had come. 15 years had passed since that day her father sent her away. 15 years since she ran into the desert and Vincent found her. In that time, she had built a life beyond anything she had dared dream. A marriage based on mutual respect and deep love, children who were being raised to think for themselves, a business that utilized her skills and earned her respect from the community, and friendships built on authenticity rather than social obligation. That evening, she shared these thoughts with Vincent as they lay in bed, their bodies curved together in the darkness. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real," she said. "That I found you, that we built this life. It seems too good to be true." "It is real," Vincent assured her, his hand warm on her hip. "And you deserve all of it. We both do. We worked hard for this, Zelda. We took risks, faced criticism, stayed true to ourselves when it would have been easier to conform. This life is not luck. It is the result of courage and commitment. Our courage and commitment, Zelda corrected. I could not have done any of this without you. We saved each other, Vincent said simply. You were dying in the desert, and I was dying of loneliness and purposelessness. We gave each other a reason to live fully. It was the truth, Zelda realized. They had rescued each other in ways that went far beyond that first physical rescue. Vincent had given her a safe place to be herself, and she had given him someone who understood his need for independence and unconventionality. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone. As the years continued to pass, Victor and Violet grew into remarkable young people. Victor inherited his parents' love of horses and showed promise as a trainer, though he also developed a talent for the business side of the operation, keeping books and managing client relationships with a maturity beyond his years. Violet discovered a passion for veterinary medicine, devouring every book on animal health she could find and accompanying her mother on all her healing work. When Violet was 14, she announced that she wanted to study to become a veterinarian. It was 1897, and female veterinarians were virtually unheard of. But Zelda and Vincent never questioned whether it was appropriate or possible. They simply asked how they could help her achieve that goal. There are veterinary colleges back east now, Vincent said. It will be expensive, and you will have to work harder than the male students to be taken seriously, but if it is what you want, we will find a way. Violet's eyes shone with determination that Zelda recognized as her own. It is what I want, more than anything. Then we will make it happen, Zelda promised. Over the next 4 years, they saved money specifically for Violet's education. When she turned 18 in 1901, they sent her to the Ontario Veterinary College in Canada, one of the few institutions that accepted women. It was heartbreaking to see her go, but also thrilling to watch her pursue her dreams with the same fierce independence Zelda had fought for all those years ago. Victor remained on the ranch, taking on more responsibility as Vincent and Zelda began to slow down slightly. At 23, he was a skilled horseman and businessman, and he had inherited his parents' philosophy about treating animals with kindness and respect. He had also inherited their unconventional approach to life. He had no interest in settling down with a wife just because society said he should, preferring to wait until he found someone who truly understood him. You have taught me not to settle for less than what you and Mother have, he told Vincent one day. I would rather be alone than be with someone who wants to change me. Vincent clapped his son on the shoulder. That is wisdom it took me years to learn. You are ahead of the game. In 1903, Violet graduated from veterinary college and returned to Arizona, becoming one of the first female veterinarians in the territory. She joined the family business, bringing her formal education to complement her parents' practical experience. Together, the three of them expanded the operation to include full veterinary services, and their reputation grew even further. Zelda was 50 years old now, her dark hair streaked with silver, her face lined from years under the desert sun. But she had never been happier. She worked alongside her daughter and son, teaching them everything she knew while also learning from their fresh perspectives and formal education. Vincent, 55, moved a bit more slowly than he once had, but he was still strong and capable, still the rock on which their entire life was built. One afternoon, as Zelda and Vincent sat on their porch watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before, Zelda reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. I was thinking about that day you found me in the desert, she said. Do you remember what you asked me? I asked you several things. You asked if I was broken after I said I had been sent away to be fixed. Do you remember what I said?" Vincent smiled. "You said they thought so, but you thought differently. That was the moment I fell in love with you, I think. When you accepted that answer, when you did not insist that they must be right. You saw immediately that the problem was not with me, but with their expectations. Because it was obvious. You were magnificent even then, half dead and defiant. How could anyone think you needed fixing?" Zelda laughed softly. "Most people could and did, but not you. You celebrated everything that made me different. You still do after 20 years of marriage." 20 happy years, Vincent corrected. "Well, mostly happy. We have had our difficult moments. Every life has difficult moments. But we faced ours together, and that made all the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. Victor was in the barn finishing the evening chores. Violet was in the small clinic they had built, organizing her veterinary supplies. The horses were settled for the night, their soft sounds drifting across the yard. Everything was peaceful, complete. "You have any regrets?" Vincent asked suddenly. "Anything you wish had been different?" Zelda considered the question seriously. Her relationship with her father had never been perfect, though it had improved before his death 2 years ago. She had lost years with her family, years she could never get back. Her path had been harder than it needed to be, marked by rejection and struggle. But all of that had led her here, to this porch, this man, this life. "No," she said finally. "I do not regret any of it. Even the painful parts were necessary to bring me to you. I would walk through the desert 1,000 times if it meant ending up here." Vincent lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "You are the love of my life, Zelda Frost, the partner of my soul. Thank you for running away that night. Thank you for being too stubborn to let them change you. Thank you for finding your way to me." "Thank you for seeing me," Zelda replied. "For celebrating who I am instead of trying to make me into something else. You gave me the greatest gift, the freedom to be myself." As full darkness fell and stars began to emerge in the vast desert sky, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from their shared refusal to conform. Their children were thriving, carrying forward the values of authenticity and independence that Zelda and Vincent had lived by. Their ranch was prosperous, a testament to hard work and mutual respect. Their love remained strong, deepened by years of partnership and shared experience. In the years that followed, Victor eventually married a teacher from town named Sarah, a woman with progressive ideas who admired Zelda and Vincent's unconventional relationship. They gave Zelda and Vincent 3 grandchildren who grew up running wild on the ranch, learning about horses and independence, and the importance of being true to oneself. Violet married another veterinarian, a man who respected her skills and ambitions and who joined the family practice, adding another layer of expertise to their operation. She and her husband had 2 children, both of whom showed early signs of the family's independent streak and love of animals. As Zelda and Vincent aged into their 60s and 70s, they gradually handed over more of the daily operations to their children, but they never fully retired. They were always there, working alongside the younger generation, offering advice and support, embodying the principle that a life lived authentically was worth every challenge it brought. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1923, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were children and grandchildren everywhere, filling the house with laughter and noise. Friends and neighbors came from miles around to honor Zelda and Vincent, people whose lives they had touched over the decades. As Zelda looked around at the gathering, at the family they had created, and the community they had built, She felt a profound sense of gratitude and completion. She had been sent away for being different, cast out by people who could not accept her as she was. But that rejection had led her to Vincent, who had celebrated her uniqueness from the very beginning. Together, they had built a life of purpose and love, raised children who valued authenticity over conformity, and created a legacy that would outlive them both. That evening, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Zelda and Vincent sat on their porch one more time, holding hands as they had done for 40 years. "We did well," Vincent said simply. "We did," Zelda agreed. "We built something good, something real. I love you, Zelda. Today, tomorrow, always. And I love you. Thank you for finding me in the desert. Thank you for bringing me home." They sat together as the stars came out, two souls who had found each other in the wilderness and created their own definition of home. Their story was not one of conventional romance or easy acceptance. It was a story of courage and defiance, of two people who refused to be diminished by a world that wanted to contain them. It was a story of true partnership, built on mutual respect and celebration of each other's strengths. Most of all, it was a story of love, deep and abiding, that proved the most powerful force in the universe is not conformity, but the courage to be authentically, unapologetically yourself, and the grace to find someone who loves you not despite your differences, but because of them. As Zelda and Vincent sat together in the darkness, surrounded by the desert they had made their home and the life they had built from nothing but determination and love, they knew they had won. They had refused to be broken, had celebrated what made them unique, and had created something beautiful in the process. Their legacy would live on in their children and grandchildren, in every person who learned from their example that it was possible to choose authenticity over acceptance, that being different was not a flaw but a gift, and that true love celebrated uniqueness rather than trying to erase it. The desert night was peaceful around them. The same desert that had nearly claimed Zelda's life all those years ago now bearing witness to the completion of a love story that had defied all expectations. They sat together in perfect contentment, two misfits who had found their place in the world by creating it themselves. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be.